Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Weaverville Town Council on Monday, May 22nd, 2023. And welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Council members, you've had an opportunity to review tonight's agenda. Are there any adjustments to be made, or do I have a motion for approval of the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. It is the responsibility of myself and all council members to let it be known if there's any conflict of interest on any items on tonight's agenda. Are there any known, does anyone have any known or perceived conflicts of interest on any item on tonight's agenda? I see none. Thank you. We're going to start tonight with a couple of public hearings, and the first public hearing is on the proposed 2024 budget. And Town Manager Coffey, can you give us an introduction to that, please?
Yes, sir, and thank you, and good evening to all of you. The North Carolina General Statute 159-12B requires that we hold a public hearing on the annual budget. The public hearing was advertised on May 11th in accordance to our general guidelines. You have, at this point in time, had two budget workshops today, and you have another scheduled for June 20th. And then the public hearing is also just a reminder that this public hearing is based on the manager's proposed budget and not necessarily on things that are added or removed by town council. You have a copy of the budget message, the executive summary, and then the last budget workshop PowerPoint in front of you, just to hit a couple of highlights before we open up to public comment. There's no tax rate proposed in this budget. There is the
tax rate increase.
I'm sorry, tax rate increase.
I'm good with the
I'm good with no
tax.
tax
No
rate.
tax
That'll work.
increase.
That'll work.
No tax
That'll make us real
increase.
popular.
That's what I get for reading notes as opposed to talking. No tax rate increase. Included in this budget, a fair amount use of fund balance to pay for capital costs. And we are proposing a 4% water rate increase. Proposed stormwater fees. Obviously, I'm not covering everything in the budget here, just hitting some highlights for you. Also personnel, new personnel, and then personnel costs. Some rather large capital equipment, street sweeper, garbage truck, playground equipment, and a trailer barrier system. I do want to call attention to the fact that we only have one workshop scheduled, unless you schedule another. I want to share with you that unless there are, if there are significant, let me put it this way, if there are significant changes that you would like to make to the budget, I would recommend that you either have consensus tonight to either remove or add, or however you want to do that, or you schedule a special called budget workshop, because the next workshop is not until June 20th. That is on a Tuesday. We are to have the agenda prepared for you 2 days later for the following Monday. So there's really very little time for staff to make any changes if you make changes to the budget within those 2 days. So just want to make that note and ask you to consider either consensus or another workshop if you'd like to do that. If you have significant changes you'd like to make to the proposed budget. With that, would open up to public comment on the budget.
We had no one actually sign up to speak tonight on the budget. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak anyway? Seeing none.
Anyone inquire?
About the, is there anyone online who would care to make any comments about the proposed budget?
So we don't have it on the agenda for us to discuss it then, if you from what you just said.
That's right.
So do you
Not
want
necessarily,
to-
but you can give
Right, or
some consensus.
should we do it now?
You can.
Or what do you want to do, Mayor?
We're going to do it now since luckily there's no one else, so go ahead.
Well, I'm against pay raises for council and the mayor. So I've been against them. And so I don't know what the rest of council feels about pay raises for us.
and although I didn't mention, talk about it publicly last time,
not very positive on it either. I appreciate all the comparisons you gave last time. That was very useful. And I look at it, the demographics of the town and the amount we're at already. And we're already at the bottom of the ranking. You could argue it's sort of bragging rights, if you will. And I think a lot of us probably look at this as, volunteer work. And so it wouldn't bother me a bit if we had a consensus to not raise it.
Anyone have any comments about the budget at this point? Keeping in mind, we do have the opportunity for another workshop, which we would, if we had one, would be earlier than regularly scheduled.
I guess one of the comments that I've got is, I was thinking that Chief Davis was going to talk to us a little bit more about what the 3 police officers and the records, I can understand what a records keeper person is gonna do, but, what are 3 police officers? How are they gonna make our town better or safer, or speed's gonna go down? What's gonna happen with 3 new police officers, considering the fact that redoing the storage room, adding 3 police officers and a records keeper is actually adding about, $650,000 to the budget?
And I'd be interested in knowing too, how we compare with other towns our size with regard to police staff.
We are pulling that information together. You had asked for that, so we are pulling that.
Thank you.
Plan on sending that out to you
Thank
next week. If you would like to have Chief Davis come to the podium and respond to the other question, I'm happy to.
It's your opportunity, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor Council. Thank you for the opportunity. As to your question, I primarily look for those officers to be in a capacity to where we could add another officer on a night shift. Right now, there's only 2 officers on a night shift. So you have to pull from the day shift in order to staff it, night shift, vacation time, training, if somebody's sick. So it's problematic when you're running a 24-hour shift because you have to sleep before you go in. And then you have to recoup from that shift. Ideally, when those 3 officers, if there are 3 that are granted, what I envision for that to do is specifically assign an officer to the downtown Main Street area, to areas that are in need of, to your question about speed, things like that. And then that way we can address those more readily. But quite honestly, it will take a while for that undertaking, just simply because the availability of people just aren't out there. There's not that many BLED certified people who would go into this capacity very quickly. Ideally, once it's fully staffed, though, I would really look for there to be a noticeable presence that you don't see right now. That answers your question.
That's part of it. So each one of them also comes with a car. And knowing the supply chain issues that we've had, can a car actually be ordered and received?
Right now, to touch on that, our fleet, we're at the point where going into the budget year with those 3 cars, we would be able to field vehicles immediately. We would be able to get the equipment before we would actually be able to get the personnel, is what I envision. We would extend the life of 2 of those vehicles, actually, to Dodge Charger extend the life of those vehicles as opposed to turning them in full sale.
Okay.
Considering staffing shortages, you can probably get vehicles faster than you can staff anyway at this point.
What was the difference? Because I couldn't do the math quick enough. When you were saying 600,000 with the record, how much is the record keeping room in the
It's
budget?
like 50,000 to take the storage room into an office, and then what, 65,000 for a record keeper?
I would have to get that
Yeah,
information.
with benefits or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I added up, and if you put everything together, it's like 600,000.
To touch on that also.
It seems high to me, but.
It is. I'm not exact. I don't I don't exactly know that number, but that is high. I don't think it was that.
Only budgeted half a year.
Right, that,
That's correct.
But the expectation is gonna take.
It's going to take a while to advertise and
we budgeted beginning January for those positions because we know that VLET is not producing the number of applicants. And we know that many of those that are finishing VLET right now are expected for.
To give you an example, I just had a department head meeting with all of the rest of the departments in the surrounding area, Weaverville, Weaverville, Sheriff's Office, things like that. There are only 10 people who are registered for basic law enforcement for this July class coming up. 7 of those are going to Asheville, or we've spoken for. 2 are going to Blacktown. That leaves 1.
One very popular guy.
For about the 4 million population that we have. It's going to take a while. As to the convertible storage, Remo's involved in a similar project in Ledger. When I was the assistant chief there, of a similar size and scope. They built the building. Since they built it, they realized they didn't have enough office space. We have an officer right now who's actually in a photocopier.
I've been there. I think what I did was I added the cost of the cars in. I mean,
How did you,
I could be wrong.
I'm uncertain because I don't think we've provided the cost of the employees to you all. So I'm not certain we.
Then maybe I grabbed the number from somewhere else. I mean, I could be wrong, Selena.
No, I just want to make sure that you have the right information. I think
Right.
Tanya, can you quickly come up with a calculation?
It's okay.
Quick question. Asheville is still way behind in the number of officers they need, so, are we close to being competitive in salaries trying to get recruited officers?
That's a good question, and one that I struggle with all the time. We are, I would say, in the middle, but I really anticipate this pendulum to shift to actual favor. The reason I say that is just get on our website and look at the benefits and packages that are offered. That combined with the fact that we have probably 3 or 4 people who are going to retire in about 2 to 4 years, which is really going to put a hurt about the time when our calls for service are going to go up in our, as you know, population.
And then unfortunately, it's going to happen right now, we're experiencing this whole staffing shortage across every industry right now. It's happening. It's simply a numbers game. The generation behind us old baby boomers is much smaller. And so there's going to be a real competition for all staff. And what will happen, unfortunately, is that all of us in every industry will start competing with each other, trying to attract the whoever's available, which will not produce more positions. It'll just produce, we'll all be raiding each other's shops to fill our own, which is an unfortunate circumstance.
That's been an ongoing issue for law enforcement for
So let me make one more note about the numbers here. If you're using the 182,000 for patrol vehicles, you can't use that full amount because 2 of those are replacement vehicles. Only 1 would be for a person.
That's probably what I was doing.
Yeah, so.
So 2 would be in our capital budget.
2 or we replace 2 annually.
Right.
Okay.
That's what it's like.
So Tanya, do you have a figure?
Yeah, our estimate for the 3 officers in 1 vehicle is $277,000.
Okay.
And that's for the full year. We only budgeted half a year.
And then at the I added the $50,000 for the storage, thing, and then the records keeping person. So that would make it up to about 400. So I was off by that amount for those cars that are automatically. Okay, good. That's a good answer. And you were going to also tell me where I discovered the variance of 497,000 in the public works operations. Like, why did it go down?
It was reappropriations, and that actually should have been the capital line of operations.
Okay.
We've got a whole packet of information to provide to you, follow-up questions, as that was going to be one of the questions.
Okay.
So I think back to what Chief was saying and then what Patrick was saying, I think if you don't get ahead of it now or try to get ahead of it, then it's gonna bite us in the rear end, and doesn't mean you're gonna get ahead of it. Gives them
I agree with
competition.
you, Councilman Nagel, that right now, I think we're at capacities in terms of our available manpower. What we experience going forward is if two retirements and there's nobody out there replacing,
Right.
see it very, very, very quickly. We will not be able to sustain the current level of service we have.
Well, like you were saying, in the current ELET, the one position left, he's going to be highly desirable, you know?
I'd like to make one comment on fees. We talked over the last meeting, or Selena presented the idea of having one-time fees versus building things into the operational budget. It was in relation to the stormwater and I think in the garbage truck. But I think I'm in favor of, in general, fees are okay if it's around a one-time operational expense where you've got an end game, an end date. And even though the public may see a new fee and that may cause questions or concern, there's some value in that too. You know, for one thing, it is end gamed, you know, like a special purpose tax. The other thing is, in one of these cases, you know, the state was making us do this, and our response could always be, you know, talk to your congressman, because it's a very valid response. My concern is if we take everything we do and build it into an operational budget, you know, there's a tendency that some things never come back out and they just stay there, and it could artificially raise the tax rate when we don't need to. So either way, we're going to pay for it. You know, the money's going to come from somewhere. So that's just my thoughts on that.
And also, I think Jeff and I were talking a little bit about the stormwater fees, and you gave us a good comparison last week. But then when Weaverville came up, okay, you said, what if we do $5? It's on page 16 or page 8, slide 16, page 8. So Weaverville resident, $5 a month, and then small community, $10 a month, multifamily.
Small commercial,
Small
small commercial.
Okay. So tell me about an apartment complex that has 100 apartments. Are they going to be 100 apartments times $5?
You want to talk about that, Dale?
I think we had there a large
Multifamily.
apartment complex was another.
But I mean, it can't be $20 for 100 apartments and it's $5 for one house.
I think so.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
One thing with the apartment complexes, especially the new ones, they already have a stormwater permit and stormwater system. And so those cases very well may end up being that $20 a month. Because they already have stormwater measures that they are implementing and staying on top of. So that's part of the complication, the complexity in setting some of these fees.
Okay. I didn't understand it. I was trying to think, how on earth could that be fair?
Any other questions for the chief?
Oh, thank you.
Councilman Jackson.
Yeah, I was just going to point out the fact, in support of your comments, that I don't know of a town around here the size, or close to the size of Weaverville, that has as many parades, other activities, and, you know, ceremonies that we have and all the other stuff. And that takes a draw on your force too.
That is absolutely correct, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, chief. Are there any other comments or questions regarding the budget while we're still in the public hearing?
So are we going to have another meeting, or did we come to consensus? Yeah, do you want to have another?
It's up to you all. What do you think?
I thought we were going to.
Still have
We-
the 20.
Right, but before that, per your
There's one
request.
scheduled for the 20th, but Selena's suggesting if we do have one, we'll move it ahead or call a special meeting due to time constraints between workshop
If there are
and.
significant, you know, changes that you all want to make, we would request that, rather than having 2 days to try to pull it all together.
Let me suggest that if you all have significant issues or concerns, that you communicate them with me soon, and then we can, that will help me inform me on how to schedule workshops and/or meetings during the month of June. Does that make sense? Oh, okay. Any other questions tonight, though? Very good. In that case, I'm closing the public hearing on the 2024 budget. And opening the public hearing on the water shortage response plan amendments. And Water Plant Supervisor Wilson, will you give us an intro to that public hearing?
The local water supply plan is a plan that we have to do every year. That shows how much water we withdraw from the river, how much we use, also how much we pull back. And that's done once a year. The water shortage response plan is a plan in case we have a shortage in water due to contamination of the river, water shortage in the river, mechanical problems, anything like that. And that has to be looked at every 5 years minimum, and we have changed a few things this time. One of them was the interconnect with Asheville has been taken out because we cannot use that interconnection, and we have added the Marshall interconnection. That's one thing that has been adjusted. Another thing that has been adjusted was the using the river gauge that is below the intake to judge the amount of water that's in the river. We have added that in there. And this is a something that we need to have a resolution on every 5 years.
So these,
Okay.
these regulations are contained in your chapter 30, under water shortage, water shortage response plan. And those few amendments do require a public hearing, which is what we're having tonight.
So no one has signed up from the public to speak on this issue, but I'm going to give you a second chance right now if there's anyone who has any comments on this matter. Is there anyone online who's participating who has any comments on the water shortage response plan?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, you did receive 2 public comments via email, which were distributed to you earlier today.
I think everyone got those.
Although we're certain whether those are public comments or public hearing comments.
There were public hearing comments on the water shortage response plan.
They were. Okay.
Hearing none, does council have any other questions before we close this public hearing? Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing on the water shortage response plan amendments. Thank you, Wendell. Appreciate that. Let's see. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda for this evening. And Town Manager Coffey, would you go through the items in the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. Beginning on page 36, you have Tuesday, April 18th, workshop minutes. Then following that, you have Monday, April 24th minutes. And then you have May 16th minutes, all for your approval. On page 42, I believe it is, you have your monthly tax report. There you'll see that we're at 99.78% with $8,732 remaining uncollected.
Never mind, it stopped. I was going to say, is someone stepping on the wires?
On page 47, we have a budget amendment for.
Are you stepping? There you go. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, man, size 15s will do that every time.
On page 47, you have a budget amendment. This is to process the claim proceeds from Nationwide Insurance totaling $15,470.85 for replacement vehicle. Page 49, you have the the third year of the 3-year audit contract for your approval, and you have a copy of that contract. We're in the third year, going into the third year for that. Page 70, We've talked this a number of times in previous meetings. The next step was to bring forward to you the amended and restated grant project ordinance for the town American Rescue Plan Action of 2021. This is for the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. On page 71, you have that resolution, or that, excuse me, that project ordinance, and that goes through page 73. And then on page 76 through 80, you have road closure ordinances, one for Music on Main on June 10th, and our July 4th celebration road closures. That's all of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Just so the public knows, when you hear that buzzing, it means that one of us is probably stepping on the wires beneath our desks, so excuse us.
Selena, would you mention about the Memorial Day observance?
I was going to note that in my notes.
Okay.
On my town manager report. Happy to go right into that if we have approval on the consent agenda.
Is there any questions about the consent agenda? And if not, can I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated by the manager?
Motion to approve.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Consent agenda is approved. Selena, you want to answer Doug's question?
Yes, good introduction of that. We have a Memorial Day program scheduled for next Monday at 11 a.m. at Lake Louise Park at the stage, outdoor stage. And so we look forward to that event. Councilman Jackson, do you want to share anything about that?
Well, I was just gonna say, I got a call today from the director of the Nelson Seniors. One of their participants said, I see it's gonna be in the community center. And I said, no, it's just in case of rain. But then I went back through the town website, and sure enough, there's one that has the map and everything, and it says it's to be in the community center. I called and left a message for him there.
For me, you left them, okay, we'll make that correction.
Correctly.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Um,
If not, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Okay. So beginning on page 81, there's several projects I want to just bring you up to date on. One is an update on the Ella Cove watershed plans. There are two issues there. As you know, Mark Hendricks has come before you before with his plans, proposal for making the Ella Cove watershed property available to the public for passive recreation. He has drafted a plan that's loosely based on a Rough Creek watershed plan from Canton. Staff is reviewing that, and we hope to have that in front of you for your June meeting for review and approval. Once that management plan is approved, we can then open that property up for folks to hike and bike. And so I think that's a really exciting project for us to move forward on. So we look forward to bringing that to you for the June meeting. The second part of the planning there is we have submitted, actually, the staff from Southern Appalachian Conservancy submitted a grant on our behalf for signage and excluding the portions of the watershed property that we do not plan on opening up with the management plan. Those are the portions that are around and near the reservoir there on that property. So we look forward to hearing from them as to whether we've received that grant. Again, it's $2,500, but every little bit helps with regard to adding signage and making sure that folks are safe on that property. Recreation complex, just to give you an update, and Vice Mayor McKenna asked that I update you on this one as well. Siteworks Studios indicated to us that they will have the final plans for the recreation complex to us by the end of May. Once those plans are complete, the project will then go to bid. Those bids will be received and then hopefully bring those to town council next month at your regular meeting for approval to begin the project. And we expect that this project will be complete by late summer, again, depending on weather and availability of materials. Also, just as a reminder to you, I did submit an application to the Asheville Buncombe Tourism Development Authority for this project in April. Unfortunately, the funding decisions are not until October. I don't know if they will make any grants retroactive, but we certainly at least have got a project out there. And eventually we add on to the park or any other things, add to that. And that will be a good foundation for us, maybe, as we're looking at grant funding.
Should we reach out to them now, let them know that, because about the timing, and see if they can comment on it, if it'd be retroactive?
We could, the application deadline was just last week though. And they have a whole, on their website, they have an entire calendar of their process. I could reach out to them and just see what that could mean, if anything, for us. I'll do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
I mean, they'll have a history of whether or not, they should know if they were gonna retro something.
I think so.
What, you know, they're either gonna go, yes, maybe, or we don't ever do that, so it's not too bad.
Right.
And if they don't, then, you know, my point of view, and I'm sure this is not Jeff's, is, you know, if we've waited this long for it and there's a possibility to get a $200,000 grant, I could wait till October. You know, I mean, that's a lot of money to help pay for something that's a recreational complex.
No, I would agree. And the point in asking her if she could reach out is they could give her warm and fuzzy about, is this project, you think that'll go through or not? And it's just timing. They may not comment, but.
Since it's a board decision that meets in October, I doubt very soon they're going to comment on it at all.
If they say we have, 40 applicants and, you don't look that good, then that's one thing.
Right.
I also suspect that even if we, if we should receive the grant and it already started construction, it could be reimbursement as well as, cost at the time of construction.
So on Peaches, I'm happy to call them and see if I can get additional information. So we do have a new town website coming online, hopefully this week. Do want to go ahead and recognize Grace, who is unfortunately, fortunately been spearheading our update to the website, but unfortunately is leaving us at the end of this week. So would like for us to recognize Grace and her contributions. She's done a whole lot in a very short period of time with the town, and we wish her well with moving on to married life in Tennessee, living in Tennessee. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Grace. Get that project done before you leave.
She's been working hard. Yes, sir.
One question, I noticed on the old website, we have search for a particular thing, it's white with a light gray, and you can't hardly read it.
It's gonna be gone.
That's good.
Don't even worry about it. It's gonna be gone tomorrow, the next.
And most of the time, they can't find what you asked it for either.
There were a number of things that needed to change, and so they're gonna, I've seen the demo, you're gonna be pleased with what we've got.
Are
Absolutely.
we going to have, did you chat GPT behind it or AI powered?
Oh, no, not yet.
Coming
Okay.
soon.
But I do want to share one other project, and this is not actually listed on here, it was an addition that I wanted to share with you. One of the projects that I actually talked to the mayor about, and probably some of you at the beginning of the year, was to implement a text notification system in town. And we have now paid the first year on that. We will be asking that residents start signing up for that in the near future. I literally sent a sample text out last week to my leadership team just to see how it worked. So we look forward to using that. It's called Code Red. And it's generally, it was created for emergency type situations, but it can also be used for road closure. So for instance, we would send out a text or email or phone call notification to those who sign up that let folks know when we're closing roads or when we're having a parade and the roads will be closed, those types of things. when there's a water line that's broken, any type of thing like that, we can send out information to those who have signed up. Unfortunately, this is not going to fix those that do not sign up.
And did you have, is it an opt-in required?
I'm sorry,
An opt-in is required?
an opt-in, you have to go online and sign up in order to get anything sent to you. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the ability to just grab people's cell phone numbers out of thin air.
Right.
So people do have to sign up for that, and get, be willing to receive those emails, phone calls, or text notifications. But I do look forward to having that in place. I think it will help us in the future with a number of things. But the one thing that I will say is we're going to have to really work hard at getting folks to enroll. As you all know, we have based on percentages, very little participation with the e-newsletter. It has grown, but people still have not signed. We still have, I don't know, 15% maybe.
That's pitiful.
Of folks who 16.
16%, all right, man, making progress.
Who signed up. So people have to sign up for these things, and we can encourage and then encourage and encourage, but until they just want to sign up for them, they're going to still be in the dark about information about the town.
And
Do
then
you automatically send it based on water bills or something like that?
We
Or do they
can't,
have to ask for it?
we cannot use information like that unless people opt in. You have to opt in. Unless it's a true emergency. If it's a true, let's say a major emergency, we can pull information from 911. But it has to be a true emergency situation. And we don't want to get into the business of trying to determine whether we make the decision, whether someone should be signed up or not, for an event or a road closure or something.
Was your question asking it to, that we could somehow encourage people to sign up, to opt in through their water bill? Is that what you meant?
No, I'm just saying that would be the base, the number of the people, tax base.
Oh, I see.
We can put, we can encourage people to sign up. We can put statements on, our billing or any place really, and get people to try to encourage people to sign up. But if it's like the e-newsletter,
They're not.
it's sometimes fruitless. We've not had really.
Only 16% will sign up, and then when they miss something, then they'll complain.
Unfortunately. So that is one addition to the report here. Mayor Fitzsimmons sent you an email today letting you know the update on our lobbyist efforts and his efforts as far as trying to gain funding from the legislature for the water treatment plant expansion. So I won't hit on that one. We'll give you an update that recently you all have talked about short-term rentals. And James and Jennifer spoke with the planning board and then met with some folks from Land of Sky who have some expertise in short-term rentals, who are going to make a presentation to the planning board at their next meeting.
does it make sense to be moving forward with the bill on the table down in Raleigh?
So the bill did not make crossover?
It did not.
It did not.
Right.
And so this actually puts it in the timing that I think y'all contemplated at your last, at your joint meeting.
So this will be, the presentation will be at the June 6th planning board meeting, and then I would anticipate that you would see that same presentation later on. The summer music series is starting up in June 17th is the first one, followed by July 11th, August 12th, and September 9th. So make sure to mark those on your calendars. Those are for 6 p.m. in the nature park. Just an update on the active Weaverville plan. It will be on your June 26th agenda. I've sent that out to you for your review. Not a whole lot of changes, even though we waited for a very long time for NCDOT to give their comments to us. They made, I believe, 2 or 3, not many at all. So we hope that you will consider approving that at your June meeting. And then finally, staff is continuing to have final meetings with the folks from Woodfin Water District to develop a interconnection for emergency water with Woodfin as a part of your earlier plans that you laid out in your resolution. That's all for my manager's report, unless any of you have questions.
Any questions for the manager? If none, thank you, ma'am. Next item is our general public comments, and let me just say that the same rules that I was supposed to review with you earlier regarding public hearing comments apply at this point. Basically, we encourage public comments, but be polite, and you got 3 minutes to speak. Is anyone who care to make any general public comments? Anyone online? Excuse me, if you would come to the podium and state your name and address.
Fred Friedman, what address? Business address or home address?
Your home address.
Okay. It's 500 Rockhold Drive, Ashland, North Carolina. I would like to know where the council stands on blocking public sidewalks. There's an issue that's been going on for quite some time on Florida Avenue. I have a business there, and it's impeding traffic on that sidewalk. So who deals with that?
That would be the police department. If you call the police department, they can answer those questions for you.
Are there not general statutes?
Yes, sir. Listen, we don't have time to go through all those tonight, but for you. The police department is in charge of enforcement.
So I should call the police department tonight.
I'm sorry?
I should call tonight.
You can call them anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? And if there's none online, we're seeing none, we will close the public comments section, move on to item 9, discussion and action items. And the first item up is Water System Development Fee Study Presentation. And Daryl Parker from Wildan, would you come forward and give us your presentation?
Yes, sir. So Jennifer, how are we going to do this?
Hang on 1 second, we'll get that up for you.
All right, well, while you're doing that, I'll do introductions. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to meet you guys in person. Glad to be here. I'm Daryl Parker with Wildan Financial Services, and this is Shannon Moore. Shannon is with Weaverville, who is one of y'all's engineering firms. And so we partnered together on this project, the System Development Fee Study. I don't know if you have anything to say, just hi.
Yeah, hi, I'm Shannon Moore, the Director of Financial Services at Withers Revenue. We've been working with the town for some time on the water and sewer side. And I'll turn it back over to Daryl, but before I do, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to the staff for helping us build all of the questions so that we can get this information as accurate for you tonight, especially Selena, Jennifer, and Tanya. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. That's a great point. This project, there was actually kind of a time crunch to get it done in the allotted time and have it ready for this meeting. And so without their efforts of getting data and pulling everything together and reviewing and all that, it wouldn't have happened as quickly as it did. All right, so what do you think, Jennifer? So you'll just run it from there?
Yep, if you'll tell us when to advance the slides, we'll do it for you.
Okay.
The slides are over here, so.
Yeah, so I might need to start. Still want to see you guys though. So just in general, and Selena has asked me to kind of move through this a little quickly, especially some of the background stuff, so you guys aren't here till midnight. But stop me with any questions, and I'll be happy to stop and answer anything. So common terminology for these capital-related fees, and we'll get into more definition here in a minute. Sometimes called impact fees, connection fees, capacity fees. In North Carolina, by law, they're called system development fees. So the study that we did is what we call SDF, System Development Fee Study. Okay, Jennifer. So back in 2017, the state of North Carolina adopted this House bill that all this, the section, chapter, and everything are up there. And basically kind of defined the SDFs, and there's numerous procedures that you have to adhere to. So that's kind of what the study does. And it obviously applies to public entities such as yourself. So basically, because of the House bill, so these fees they're imposed, kind of by definition, imposed only on new development, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the purpose is to fund water or sewer improvements for your system. We're talking about your water system. And basically, it's those improvements that are required or necessitated by and attributable to new growth. So basically, you're building facilities, or you have built facilities that have capacity to accommodate growth. So the procedures here that we have to follow, I'll run through these pretty quick. It's got to employ, it's got to be done by a financial professional. So that would be us. Generally accepted accounting and engineering methodologies. If we're going to use the incremental cost method, and I'll show you the 3 different methods here in a minute, then you've got to have a capital improvement program, a CIP we call it. It's got to be at least 5 years, no more than 20 years. Once the report's done, it's going to be posted online 45 days. You've passed that posting period. Has to be adopted through a public hearing. That's why we're here tonight. If there are any comments or changes or any modifications, that would happen after this meeting. Have to be adopted by resolution or ordinance. Jennifer, go ahead.
And just for town council's information, y'all held that public hearing last meeting.
And finally, the fees have to be updated at least every 5 years. And here, that's why there was the time crunch, because you had these fees adopted July 1, 5 years ago, and June 30th would be the end of that period. So what we'll do tonight is kind of have those fees in place, or have them ready for you to take action on it at your leisure. So the 3 different methods are the buy-in method, incremental cost method, and the combined method. Buy-in method just looks at your existing assets, what's out there, your treatment facilities, your lines, what's in the ground, and says, okay, we've got this much capacity, it costs us this much to build, so any new customer connecting to the system needs to pay their proportionate share of those facilities. Incremental cost method, that's where we're looking into the future. We're saying, okay, what do we have to build now to accommodate growth? So that was that CIP, that 5 to 20 year capital plan. And then there's the combined method, which is basically just kind of a weighted average of the other 2. So in general, this type of fee, it's one time only, and it's capacity related. So we're talking in a minute about the assets that we're looking to recover the costs on. Basically, it helps growth pay for itself. So it kind of protects your existing customer base, because they're not having to pay for these assets that they're not really using, that they're for future customers.
Can I get your pause on that for 1 second?
Sure.
I don't know, I know we often don't answer people's emails on public comment, and I didn't feel like bringing it up earlier, but one of the emails, the person clearly misunderstands.
Yes.
So I think it would be appropriate maybe to reply somehow from somebody to say exactly what you just said. So the public comment through the email was, why is the existing water customer base paying for growth? And they're not.
No, they're not.
We know that.
Yeah.
But how we politely, unless that person's listening tonight, I hope you heard that, whoever that was, Ms. Wheeler. So maybe we should reply.
So, Cindy, would you make sure the staff gets a report?
Just, that was exactly it.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
thank you for
Oh,
letting me
yeah,
interject.
you do it. And that's a great point. And it's not meant to be a perfect science. It's not necessarily going to be exactly to the dollar, but it is meant to help mitigate those costs so that your current customers, aren't having to pay for facilities that don't benefit them. Okay. So for the water system, the cost that we're trying to recover, we're looking at the water supply facilities, water treatment facilities, storage, major transmission lines and pumping facilities. So what we're looking at is the big components of your system that do provide benefit to the entire system. we're not trying to recover costs of localized distribution lines that just provide benefit to customers or individual homes. So what we back out of your assets when we're looking at that buy-in method is, we're not looking to recover vehicles, localized lines I mentioned, and we also, some assets, we may not be sure what they are. We know they're part of your water system. So what we did is put a cost limit, and in our analysis, any asset that was less than $100,000, we assumed was not a major asset. And so it just got backed out automatically. And that's why I say it's not perfect, but it's meant to be as reasonable as possible. So here are the numbers for the buy-in method. We won't go into the detail. You can see the classes that we've included for recovery. We break them into treatment and transmission facilities, primarily because there are different capacity numbers, and we're trying to recover the cost of capacity. Treatment facilities have one capacity. Transmission usually has at least that much or higher capacity. Okay. So for the incremental cost method, I mentioned that's your capital improvement program, your CIP. Same kind of thing. We're really looking to just capture the new facilities, the big primary components that are expansion related, that are facilitating new growth. We try to exclude renewal and replacement capital projects. Now those are still part of your CIP, but that's part of your current system. So we're not including the recovery of those assets in our analysis. Same thing with anything that was contributed through grants or developers. Those were not costs that were incurred by the town, so we back those out as well. So here's the incremental cost numbers, which just show kind of what the total is and what was excluded, so you see what we're trying to recover. So just kind of as a visual, you saw we had the buy-in and the incremental costs of the existing facilities, the CIP, and then there's also the combined option, which we'll see here in a minute. So all we're doing is we're taking the total recoverable costs, we're backing out credits. There's a debt service credit for outstanding debt on the system as part of the buy-in, and the purpose for that is we don't want to include costs in the system development fee that are also paid again through your user rates, the annual debt service is part of your budget. There's also a 25% CIP credit. That's part of the House bill, one of the requirements. So then that gives us our net recoverable costs. And from that, we can look at our combined method, which is next. So we've got those separated here again between treatment and transmission for the same reason as before. Go ahead, Jennifer. So what we're looking at here from a visual, so we've got our existing assets, as we said, separated between treatment and transmission. We divide each of those components by the capacities for those facilities. So we come up with a cost per gallon of treatment capacity, cost per gallon of transmission capacity. And we'll see those numbers. So the top part being the buy-in costs separated out between those two components and added together. See the incremental cost, which, as you might expect, the incremental cost method is typically going to be a higher number because it's today's cost or future costs, as opposed to your buy-in method, which some of those assets may have been around for 20 plus years, so they cost a lot less back then. So this is right in range with what we would expect to see. And then on a combined basis, as I mentioned, it's kind of a weighted average of the two. So here again, just a visual of that. So we take the cost per gallon of capacity, then we have to apply it to a level of service. How much capacity are we assuming each equivalent residential unit, that's the ERU, typical new household, how much water treatment capacity, transmission capacity do they need? So the state's number is 400 gallons per day for planning purposes. Yes.
It's the only time I like that number.
Why is that?
Because it's a wrong number and it's in our favor.
Well, we backed that down to make that more of an average day number. So that's where the 267 comes from. So then we come up with an SDF per ERU. Okay.
One person does that.
Now, the reason we're keeping these separated out between buy-in, incremental, and combined, we're not necessarily proposing any of the three. We want you guys to have the option. And I say we, as a team, that was the decision. So we can see these fees, these are what we would consider the calculated fees, and you choose from there. Then on the next slide, we can see those in comparison. This is just for one ERU. You've got the fees in place now, the 2232. So and those were based on the buy-in method 5 years ago. So your new buy-in method is a little bit higher. I mean, added facilities in that 5-year period. So we would kind of expect that. If you went with just the incremental cost method, not typically what we would recommend. We would typically suggest either the buy-in or the combined, but obviously that would be a much larger increase if you went incremental. And then if you did the combined, it would be in between. So this is what it looks like on a per meter size basis. And then this is the structure you have now, which is very common in the industry. This is what we expect to see typically. If we don't see that, we suggest that this type of structure be used. So it just has all those different meter sizes and the comparison for each. Jennifer and I were talking beforehand. Apparently, since we did this, the town has found out that you might be eligible for some grant money. So now the capital costs that are in the incremental cost and the combined method, the CIP, don't adjust for a grant. We're not aware of the grant opportunity at the time. So we kind of went with our best information. So that being said, you may want to take that into consideration, because if you get all that grant money and you're using either the incremental cost or the combined method, you may have to come back and make an adjustment after the fact.
Right.
So just something to consider. And any questions? All right, we got a couple. Yes, sir.
You said you typically don't recommend the incremental, but it's more favorable for the town to use that. So what's your reason?
Well, I say we typically don't recommend it. We typically suggest the combined method because it takes into account what you already have plus what you're planning for. And the other part of that is your CIP. We kind of refer to that as a fluid document. It's a planning document. So some of those costs are going to change, and you kind of want to have that flexibility. Nowadays they're changing up, they're not changing down. So there's you want to kind of have that flexibility of saying, okay, well, if we're going on the high end, yeah, those numbers may need to change a couple years down the road. If we stay kind of in the middle, in that middle zone, it's probably kind of fine where it is for a while.
But the difference is, I have to do the calculation, but it looks like it's about, I think it was 15 cents versus 20 there on it.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. 20.
So, in 5 years, you're talking about a third increase. And I don't think we would have that, so I'm just wondering. I'm just looking at what's favorable for the town.
Sure, and you can do whatever you want to from the way it's discussed in American Water Works Association manuals is that you would use the incremental cost method if your current assets, your current system had no extra capacity to sell. And then that would make perfect sense. That's not usually the case. Usually there is some current available capacity, usually when we're doing these. But, right, if you looked at your system or from an engineering standpoint, Shannon's not an engineer, she's a finance person like me, but with an engineering firm. If they said, no, you're out of capacity, don't even bother with the buy-in method, then we would say, okay, we're good with that.
So I'm still confused on, and I was going to ask the same question that Doug asked, why we wouldn't charge the highest rate possible. This is for new people wanting to buy into our system. And I don't understand why you wouldn't legally charge as much as you're legally allowed. Because if something changes, in 2 years, do we have to, or is it in 5 years? Like, is that gonna be more work for, because you had brought that up 5 years ago, and I'm trying to get my head back around it.
So last, 5 years ago, we only analyzed the buy-in method because at that time, the legislation was very new and there wasn't a lot of guidance on the incremental and combined. I don't even think there was an ability to do a combined method at that point. So we did, just went with the buy-in. Town council decided to go pretty close to that maximum, for the very reasons that you said. We have not analyzed that any further because you were already at that maximum. If for some reason you do decide to go with a lower amount, say the buy-in method right now, there's nothing to prevent you from changing it on January 1 or next July 1. You can change it as long as you don't go over what the maximums are.
Yeah, but if we go maximum, if we go incremental max 5420. We're good for 5 years? Or if something changes, do we have to do a readjustment, as he was saying, in a couple of years?
What I will tell you is that I would prefer, if we do get some appreciable amount of funding from the legislature, in the millions of dollars, then I think that maximum under incremental and combined is inflated because they haven't been able to pull that grant funding out.
But is it fluid? So we have a deadline to approve this. Mr. Lobbyist over here is not going to meet that deadline.
Right.
So we can always
We
adjust
could
it.
get zero.
We can always adjust it in January if we.
Right, that's my point. And I think to Doug, this is for new growth.
Right.
We can
Why are
always
we
go
giving
down.
away the house?
We can always go down.
Right, if you-
What you're saying.
So this is more for, I guess, fellow council, right?
Yes, you can always go down and say, wow, we got
$10 million?
$10 and so we're gonna do a 10%, decrease, or we can give you that number and.
Get a
It's just a calculated number. I mean,
Agreed.
I'm sure you wouldn't charge us, the same amount, just change the number and.
It would be a lot.
No, it would be the buy-in method.
We've actually had those conversations and they have been very gracious and willing to make some, to recalculate those, given where the legislature lands on those grants.
But with the supply chain being the way it is and the price of things going up the way Dale Pennell will tell you that they are, I kind of agree with Andrew. Why wouldn't we charge the most amount and then go down if we have to?
And I may regret that. I may regret that if my well goes dry, okay, because then I'd have to buy in. I'm not
But you
on.
got plenty of money.
Is that a conflict, is that a conflict of interest since I'm not on water? No, you don't see that as a conflict of interest? Did you say I've got plenty of money?
Well, and it's a one-time, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a one-time, right? Keep that in mind. We're not talking about an ongoing operational expense. And yeah, I agree. I mean, you can always adjust backward, but that would seem to be the conservative approach where you're covering your bet. I can't think of a logical, what's the counter to this, why you wouldn't do it? Really? And given all the dynamics in the market.
There might be reasons. If you had too much water and you were wanting the town to grow fast, you go, make it easier to buy in, right? So high buy into the water system would stunt growth a little bit.
Right, true.
And you go, if we're concerned about water and we've got this plan that we voted on to expand and it's going to take X number of years, why are we selling it cheap?
But this amount's not going to sway a business coming in. We're not,
No,
I mean,
but
It's not.
no. It's,
when you're doubling it, and you go, somebody's going to go on a 6-inch line, is it going to sway them? Maybe not. That's fine then. If it's not going to sway them, then why aren't we charging it? Yeah. So anyways, I've voiced my opinion. I'm in favor of charging the most possible.
Does any of the council members have a counter opinion?
So I'm hearing a bit of a consensus to land
Yes.
in the 5,000 under the incremental cost method, again, maybe you don't want to go full 5,430.
That's what you
go
recommended,
5,000.
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to give yourself a little bit of room in case something
It's
adjusts.
a round number, it'll get adjusted up for
That's
the factors, but yeah. 5,000, does it seem?
Everybody good? Yep.
And this goes in the water budget.
Yes.
This is not the general fund.
Yes.
So my question has nothing to do with SDS, but rather to the issue that Andrew was bringing up. So if the state tells us we have to calculate the average ERU, did you notice how I used that acronym?
That was good.
I know. It's 400 gallons per day, but we know that it's much less, and you came up with 267. So I'm curious where you found, how did you land on 267?
It was basically the way we kind of use some engineering guidance that oftentimes water treatment facilities are kind of assumed to have a max day of about 1.5 times their average day. And so we just took the 400 and made a 1.5 times adjustment.
Okay.
Nothing.
It has been an item of discussion with us a lot of times.
How
many years?
400 gallons came from?
I don't know where it came from. It's been there a long time though.
I can tell you where it came from.
Okay.
The Department of Agriculture back in the late 80s and early 90s came up, and this was based on farms, irrigation, and other kind of things. It also had the regular old commodes and dishwashers and all the other. So that 400 gallons is out of date by 30 years, 35 years. A lot's changed, but they haven't changed it because it took them 30 years to do that study.
And it's funny you say that in here in North Carolina, you guys don't have a sewer system, but for those utilities that do, that number is 120 gallons per day per bedroom for sewer. The state is already proposing a bill that will reduce that, I think, to maybe 80 gallons per day or something. I can't remember what the adjustment, because you're right, because things are different now, and there's a lot more, low use facilities and that type of thing.
Wait, so they're proposing to reduce that?
On the sewer.
On the sewer.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they be doing that in parallel with water? That makes no sense, because the two are in concert.
They are related, you would think.
That's
but,
nuts.
But I think, I think they just, I don't know.
It's state government, man.
Wow.
30 years.
But that would be our end. We don't even have to lobby for it.
Water
So,
was based on a unit, so.
wow.
But they didn't ask me.
Yeah, we get it.
Any other questions for Mr. Parker? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate
guys.
it. We'll move on to item B, which is the local water supply plan and water shortage response plan approval, which you heard Mr. Wilson discuss before. Do we need him to reiterate that, or does everybody think they get it? And if everyone thinks they get it, is there a motion to approve the, go ahead.
There are three things that you're being asked to approve with this item. One is a resolution approving the local water supply plan that Mr. Wilson described for you a little bit earlier. The ordinance amending Code Chapter 30 concerning the water shortage response plan to make those few little updates. And then the resolution approving that water shortage response plan. Both of those resolutions then get forwarded to Department of Environmental Quality.
And is there any objection to doing all those in one vote? Good.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Because I got confused on the water intake, the comment you made about where it's metered, where and how that's part of the plan of where we're measuring the water. I'm kind of lost on that.
We've got two ways of measuring water that's in a river. One is at our plant, we use a depth gauge in our pit for the water. The other is a river gauge, put up by USDA, not USDA.
Right, the North Carolina NCDR.
Yeah.
Right, down, and that's the one, that's the whole thing we've been talking.
It's downstream.
Correct.
Before the river goes into the Frederick River.
Right.
And that is online, and we can look at that anytime.
And yeah, so that, and again, there was another public comment, and we had this whole conversation for the last 2 years about where we're measuring the water, or where we're measuring it downstream when there's X number of tributaries coming in, but it's because it's online and you can actually,
Right.
in a perfect world, we'd have NCDR move it upstream and put it right where we take it out of the river, but I don't think they're doing that for us.
And the consultant factored it
What
in.
is independent? That's the best way to look at it, you know. One is an official measurement
Mm-hmm.
by, let's say, the government, you know, and the other one is an independent that we go out, you know, like.
Right, and you can't get that one, you know, that doesn't help you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions on this matter? If not, is there a motion to approve the water supply plan and water shortage response plan?
I make a motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is item C, the water commitment renewal for 9 Pleasant Grove Road. And Public Works Director Pennell, would you tell us about this issue?
A year ago,
Can't believe you said that.
Council meeting, you approved a water commitment application for 9 Pleasant Grove Road, a townhouse development that consisted of 54 units and had a requested flow of 22,000 gallons per day. Their year commitment has expired and or will expire in a few days. So they're back and to us and have asked for an extension of that water commitment. In the meantime, the project has gone through the development approval process with Buckingham County Planning. As part of that process, they were required to reduce the number of units from 54 to 40. And that had a similar decrease in their flow from 22,000 gallons per day to 16,000 gallons per day. So we're in a position from a water standpoint, public works standpoint, to recommend to you to approve that 1-year extension for the water commitment. Fewer units, less water, the conditions in the valley have changed. So we're in favor of approving that request. In the meantime, at the original approval, this project was located a couple thousand feet from the nearest point on the town's town limit line. So the thought of requiring to annex was not really a consideration at that time. However, when we at a recent meeting approved the 480 Green Street project, that basically closed that gap. So the boundary for that project is just across Reeves Creek Road from this property. And so now this property is actually contiguous with the town boundary. So we're asking for your consideration of do we want to add annexation into the mix as a part of granting their renewed water.
I would think so.
Yes.
Can everyone give a head shake if everyone agrees?
Yeah.
So Jennifer, so what if we wanted to require annexation in order to renew the water commitment, what would we do tonight? To deny it and then no?
Make the motion.
You would make a motion to renew the water commitment for an additional year conditioned upon their annexation.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to do as attorney just to say?
I'll make that motion.
Any other questions on this matter? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So done. Next up, Councilman Cordell has started a conversation with us at a previous meeting on core values, and she's going to continue that discussion tonight.
So planning for the future is what we do on a good day, right? And the reason that I ask you to think about your personal core values is because how you see the world is how you interact with others and each other. As a council, we're a group of people who work together for a common purpose. And I wanted to let you know, when we did a summary of the core values that we came up with, our council as a group where it's 5 core values: honesty, integrity, truth, trust, and teamwork. I thought that was great, and we all might have a slightly different definition of those, but I'll start off by saying a few thoughts of mine. Honesty is mean you tell the truth, but it actually means you tell the truth even if it hurts. And I was talking to John Chase because I knew he was going to be out tonight, so sometimes you have to say, you need a cert. You know, that's telling the truth, even if it hurts. Integrity is a consistent behavior. Some of us might even call that our moral compass. Truth. Okay. Truth is something that we believe in our mind and in our heart, sincerely believe that something is true. And then trust is something that, can I trust you to tell me the truth? So do I trust somebody? Do I trust something? Is it reliable? Teamwork, I would say, is a prerequisite for this committee, this council to work together. Jennifer, can you put up the core values for me, or James? Our core values and our beliefs influence what we see. So I want you to see this. This first one here, do you see a young woman or an old woman?
Do you want us to answer?
Sure.
A young woman.
Yeah.
Young woman.
Yeah, yeah.
Can any of you see the old woman? Okay, good. Do you see a vase?
Oh, yeah, now it's here.
Do you see a vase or 2 faces?
Both.
You see both. And probably because you've seen these before. So the very next one, this is me and Andrew. I see a 6, he sees a 9. And only when we get together and look at this side by side do we see the same thing. Okay. This bottle, can you see the water in here? Again, is it half empty or half full? It's what we see. What we see is what we believe. So on the screen next, you'll see the card that they gave us, School of Government, where the instructors helped us to define and analyze, dissect the public values. Now, our core values are our personal core values. And we bring with us, we hope, honesty, integrity, and truth to these positions. And that's what we owe to the town of Weaverville, that we will continue to have those core values. But the School of Government says that the public has these values that they want us to constantly balance and provide quality of life to everybody. So if you go down one more, this has words that go with it. So liberty, when people think of liberty, freedom and choice, the opportunity, equality, fairness, tolerance, open-mindedness. Actually, open-mindedness was one of the core values that somebody had. Equal rights and diversity falls under equality. Community, we've talked a lot about community over the last month. Feeling safe, traditions, belonging, it's a neighborhood, feels like home. Prosperity, growth. Growth is return on investment, and it's not just about money though. A lot of times, prosperity can be security and safety to some people. So issues, both large and small, reflect public values. And our job as a council is to continue to balance these competing values. What happens when we have competing values, it means that one of these is being weighted and more heavy than another. And the truth is, none of these are more important. They're all equally important. And by balancing them, sometimes it's a hard job to balance those. But as a council, we are committed to the Weaverville residents to do this, to work the best we can to balance so that the quality of life.
is good for all. And I know that all of us care deeply for the town of Weaverville and its future. And I do look forward to continuing to work with you. One of the purposes of going to the School of Government is so that we all work better together. And I wanted to bring this forward to you. Do you have any questions or comments? Is there anybody that would like to elaborate on the core values exercise that we did and how you see that they fit into the public values?
How do you, just a question, Catherine, how do you see, or maybe the folks that you went through on the session, you know, day to day when we're looking at issues, a lot of it is just evaluating facts and information, making a decision based on what our, you know, latitude we have. So how do you, from a practical standpoint, how do you think our individual values comes into our decision making?
Well, again, it goes down to the reason I said this is me and Andrew is because what you see is what you truly believe. And taking this class has made me understand that sometimes people just don't see it your way. And you see it sometimes as plain as day. And other people just don't see what you see. And I think that goes back to our core values, but it can go back to how we were raised. It goes back to the jobs that we've had, the people we've known, can be religion, can be a lot of those things that have fallen in there into, we might perceive something as, for example, we all can talk about choice. Okay, choice is a big deal, and it's not just about women's rights or gun control or Airbnbs or can I drive 55, but it's a choice. And so sometimes in our core beliefs, we have to bring them back down and say, okay, how are we going to deal with the town of Weaverville and its future and its growth? I mean, yes, we're bringing our own personal core values to this, but our job here as this council is how is it going to affect everybody? One of the neatest things that we did at this week-long seminar class was they divided us up into what would be like a council. They put us in something called a trust circle and a core group. And so one person would bring their problem and they would tell us all about their problem for 10 or 15 minutes. And then we could ask questions. It was timed. We would then ask questions for another 10 minutes. And then the person had to turn around. And we got to talk, and they couldn't say anything for 10 or 15 minutes. They could listen to all these brainstorms that we were doing, but they couldn't talk. And so then when they turned back around, they already knew the things that we had talked about, but there was another 10-minute period in there where after we discussed everything, we wrote down things that said, tell the person with the problem, have they tried this and this and this? Have they looked here, there, and something? And there was great times when people would say, I never thought about it that way. I didn't see it that way. So.
Okay. Where do you think the school government got these public values? Do they explain how they came up with these public values?
I think I think they've been using this for about 20 years. And I'm sure it came about from lots of different trial and error to get it narrowed down to this.
So in your class, because these things, so you have these differences in perspectives.
Yes.
And then we have now 7 of us. Okay.
A lot and so what I said, a couple months ago is one of the things that I learned is I hadn't really thought so much about it until after I went to this class. We probably totally have 7 different personalities and 7 different beliefs and 7 different viewpoints.
Right. You should. I mean, it just makes sense.
Right. And in an old story is if everybody agrees, then somebody's not necessary. But go.
No, yeah, you're correct. So do they give you, obviously you can decide to be, or not you, we, a council, a state legislature, If you're in the majority, then you go, do I have to work together? No, I really don't. If you're in the minority, you're crying the blues when you're in the minority, but when you're in the majority, you have a responsibility or not to listen to other viewpoints. And then I think what happens is the public can then decide. Andrew sucks as a council member and we're not going to reelect him, right? And that's our take home. So we can decide as a council to be very dysfunctional and go, we don't need to get along. Should we get along for the better of the town of Weaverville? Well, not if I don't like the direction that Doug's taking it. I may go, I don't see eye to eye with Doug on anything. And I just want to argue with him all day long. And if I'm in the minority, I'm just talking in the wind and Doug's going, yeah, he's an idiot. And these things that are important to me in the town of Weaverville, I don't really care what Andrew thinks, but I have to listen to him speak because he just speaks. So did they give any insight other, and I know how to work in groups. I've worked in a lot of groups, but did they give any insight as far as whether it is a town council or county commissioners or state legislatures, how we do that? Because I think as a society, we don't do that very well. I think we get power hungry, and when we're in the majority, we go, we really don't care what the minority. I mean, Brownie Newman did it. He two years ago, he passed some bill and didn't let the minority even see it. And he goes, it didn't matter. I mean, at least he was honest. He goes, it didn't matter. I had the votes. I mean, it was said it in black and white. You go, wow. So you don't care what the minority thinks at the moment because you're in power. But how will you feel when you're not in power and then your voice is not heard? So I don't know if they gave you any insight to that.
So some of the things we talked about, learning the people that you work with, because this is going to be the people you work with for 4 years. And so it's in our best interest to work together to try to come to a common goal because we are working toward a common purpose. Okay? And so some people talk too much. Some people don't talk enough. Some people think in their head. Some people think out loud. And those are the kind of things we talked about, was how to accept everybody for who they are, because sometimes we don't even know who they are. We all get elected. The people have put their trust in us, but we don't even know each other very well. So we have to get to know each other. And then to find out, the reason I started with what are your personal core values is because if there were, and I asked you to narrow it down to 4 or 5 specifically, so I gave you the sheet that had 30 or 40 words on it, and then you narrowed it down and you gave it to Jennifer. Jennifer then gave it to me as a summary. If there was nothing here that we had in common, we have to struggle more than we've been struggling. Knowing though that we have honesty, integrity, truth, trust, then all of us want to trust each other, I believe. All of us want and hope that we can believe that we're telling each other the truth. I think all of us want to be honest with our people who are the citizens of Weaverville. We may not definitely agree on everything. I don't think we will. I don't think husbands and wives agree. Mothers and fathers don't agree. But we're living in a world that we have come to this majority, minority, all kinds of stuff. And, the council is supposed to be what's the word for, it's not going to be Democrat or Republican, it is
Bipartisan.
Partisan, there we go. And so it's not supposed to matter what our religion or politics or color, those kind of things. We all have, we bring stuff with us, but that's not what we're here to decide about. So we want to do what's best for the public. Now, sometimes growth, some people say, I don't want any growth, but it's going to grow all around us, whether we want growth or not. And people will say, I don't want us to expand the water treatment plant because why should the other people have water? The water was put here by God in the river for everybody, so it's first come, first serve is what the government says, and you know, we can have it in Weaverville or somebody else can take it, but the water's gonna go somewhere. We just happen to put a treatment facility there first. That's one thing, that's one way of looking at it, but some's a 6 and some's a 9, you know.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate you doing this, and I think the sad thing is, you get elected, so there'll be an election in November, and then you know, and Michelle knows, and John knows, within 3 weeks, you're gonna be voting on stuff, the new, whoever runs and is elected, and there isn't, by law, we don't have to get along. So we don't have to like each other at all. And in business, that often happens where you go, I respect you, I work together, but I don't have to like you. But the common goal, and then if we don't want to get along, and I think we've diverged. When I ran for council, when we sat in the audience, it was painful that at least several people didn't get along and didn't want to do that. And then what do we do? Or do we have an obligation then? And what is that obligation to go, whether we like each other or not, and we have a 6 or a 9 or a different viewpoint, we all care about the town, or we wouldn't have done this. We didn't do it for the money, and no, we don't want to raise. You can keep my raise. Oh, wait, I'm not coming back. So we did it as volunteers, right? There's nobody in the right mind who did this on purpose for the money. What I would love to see, and it's just never going to happen, right? Whether it's at the town of Weaverville level, the county commissioner level, or the state level, where people really change and go, I want to get past those things. And we may disagree exactly what's on and the agenda or where we're trying to get to, but we got to work together, and we're not required to do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's the problem.
So one of the things that Andrew and I actually, we disagree a lot on some of this stuff, but I like Andrew and we actually get along personally. And so one of the things that we kind of talked about is we're almost the same age, and we grew up in a world where you just say, well, we agree to disagree. And then tomorrow we play together just fine. You know, I mean, shouldn't hate people over the fact that they believe something that's, they see a 6 and you see a 9. You shouldn't hate somebody over that. And so where I want to build on this over the next couple of months is I've talked to Patrick and Selena about our mission and our vision, and the fact that, you know, we have one that's not up to date, and we are probably going to work on that. But, you know, who is Weaverville? You know, I mean, we're a great place to raise a family. We have a great police department, a great public works, a class 2 fire department, an award-winning water treatment facility. We've been known as Tree City for how many years? We have 6 miles of sidewalks, 2 parks, almost a fabulous Grove Park Inn of community centers. I mean, good grief, it's beautiful right on the lake. We offer the music on Main, and the 4th of July, and Argent Autumn, and the music in the parks on the 4 times in the summer. You know, we are a small town atmosphere. We hear a lot about people saying, keep this a small town. We are a small town. We are a wonderful, vibrant, thriving, small town with breweries and restaurants and walkability and people who I hope like each other and love each other and don't care whether you see a 6 or a 9.
Yeah. I mean, just one thought, and just it occurred to me that, and this is great what you've done, you know, to your point. I wonder if the core values, even if we're all totally aligned and have the same core values, how much that really matters in our day-to-day decision-making, because it occurs to me the main thing in that is critical thinking. Like, we could be in total alignment, we're all honest, but we could have 7 different ways of voting on things because we're processing the facts differently, and that's fine. And that capability of critical thinking, I don't think it's mentioned in any of this, but that's the thing that I've found you have to kind of develop in this job is taking input from the community, the facts at hand, and what's the right decision. It has nothing to do if I'm honest or trustworthy or anything. I accept that I'm that, and I accept everybody else here is. But how are we going to process the information and make financial decisions? That to me is like, but that's just an aside, it's just me.
But I understand, because one of the things that I found when I came on council was, I don't think there's enough time to do the brainstorming. And, because I had critical thinking in college, and I am a major critical thinker because I analyze everything. And, one of the jokes for my, roommates were, I ping pong it to death. I mean, because I'm hitting it against the wall. And then, when I had this class, it's a name of a personality of a person who does what Andrew does, and they brainstorm out loud. And there are people who are very quiet and don't do that, and it irritates them so bad. But he has to do that to be able to get all that stuff out of the way to get to his conclusion. And it's just the different ways that we critical think. And so I would say my biggest struggle during the first year was we didn't have enough time to analyze and critical think during our planning sessions or our workshop. I mean, I would love to write things on the wall, mark through them, and do little sticky things where we talk about, okay, now put this here and then take it away and come up with priorities. Like when we had that meeting a year ago in May, and we said these are the big potential growth areas. We already knew we had growth areas, situations, but we at least got to narrow it down so that we could see it. But I thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And if you and Andrew do go away, we will miss you.
Thank you, Catherine. We appreciate your work. Chief Davis, should you give us the quarterly report from the police department?
To let you know, we have, as in terms of our activity this year versus last year, we were down slightly in our calls. We were at 1606 versus 1787 the same period last year.
Good trend.
Thankfully, the arrests were down as well, almost in half, as you can see. The amount of accidents that were up, they were up by 20 collisions. We had 44 last year and 64 this year, but the amount of injuries is down by 1. And I attribute most of those to parking lot vendor kind of incidents. The next page, we best categorize this quarter as thankfully quiet for criminal activity. There's one area that has increased, and that is simple assault. The rest of the areas show a slight decline or remain steady. But at the bottom of the page, you can see, I don't think you can see it, there you go. The total number of events goes up and is going up month to month, which I would fully suspect would go into the busiest months here going into summer. The next slide with our times and our response times, these numbers are kind of consistent to what we've had from the high priority calls and the low priority calls. Like say they could be handled by a phone or walking. But if you notice the average priority, those are the ones that we'll go to when it's taking an officer's time and we're being dispatched on calls. Simply put, that time is increasing. It's been increasing. So that means, that tells me we have less available time. It's taking the officers longer to go to average priority calls. And the next slide, just a little tidbit. I know that Vice Mayor McKenna, a couple of months ago, I believe, we touched on where we get our money for input on some of these big ticket items. This is kind of what we were able to put together here. So in 2019, the fleet consisted of Dodge Chargers. That's all we had for the patrol fleet. That average fuel mileage was about 10 to 12 miles per gallon. We consumed about 16,350 gallons that year. 2020, we started to transition to a hybrid-only patrol cars that average between 20 and 24 miles per gallon. So this year, we're estimating that we'll use about 11,500 gallons of fuel. And as you can see, that's a pretty significant decline in the consumption of fuel, even though we're busier. The overall that reduction has also been seen in maintenance. We have $1,300 per vehicle with the Dodge Chargers. I had to look at this again. I had to make sure everything was right. So far, with all of the hybrids, we have a grand total of one vehicle that has cost us $133.
Wow. Jeez.
So
Excellent.
it's significant, and a lot of that goes into, and that's not including, of course, tires, oil change, but a lot of that goes into brakes, the braking ability, the regenerative braking in the hybrid vehicles. It was very expensive with the older patrol cars. And anytime you'd have to replace the brakes, rotors, pads, things like that. So there's a significant savings. Your money is being well spent.
Great. Any questions for the chief? That's good. Good news. Low crime and low gas consumption. Good news. Thank you, sir. Chief Harris, would you give us the quarterly report from the fire department, please?
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. On our quarterly report call volume-wise, we were 261 in our North Buncombe Rural District and 191 in the town limits. Mutual aid provided was 857, which equated out to 509 calls for this quarter from February 1st through April 30th. Our overlapping calls was 120 calls out of that 509, which equated to just over 23.5%. Meaning that while we're on a call, another call comes in, which is the purpose of the dual company station and staffing. In this quarter, our response time in the 90th percentile, we were able from dispatch to arrive was just over 6 minutes. So we're averaging, providing that level of service in that amount of time. As far as our fire prevention side, there were 26 child safety seat inspections performed where we have people come to the station, either with a newborn asking us to install their car seat or coming by and asking us to check a current safety seat in their car, providing that service. In commercial business inspections, we performed 55 during this quarter, and a number of public safety events taking place at the schools in conjunction with the police department, and we recently been awarded the grant that the manager mentioned to you on our bicycle safety helmets, so we're a collaborative effort now with the police department trying to work on some things for the end of school year for bicycle safety and being able to issue out some helmets there with the grant that was received. As far as moving forward, some of the changes that we've had, Councilmember Cordell was able to attend our awards and badge giving ceremony, which was something we have recently implemented, and that was a success. We had family members come, pin the badges on personnel that recently got promoted, but the other thing we did with that is we involved the families themselves. Our goal in the fire service up here now is to create more of a family environment, incorporating the spouses and the children and giving them, we take away a third of their significant other's time being in the station. So what we're trying to do now is figure out how to incorporate that family into our family. And I feel like we had great success that night with the banquet and awards. I appreciate council's involvement in that and being able to participate in that. And again, it goes back to creating that cohesive environment and the trust involved in that with the families being able to trust me with their loved one's life and make those decisions. As Councilman Cordell mentioned about the core values, I mean, that's something we are working to establish and growing our organization in a different direction, and we feel like we're having success in that environment. So that's what we have for our full report. We're glad to take any questions that you may have.
Any questions for the chief? Then, thank you, sir, and thank you for the direction you take in the fire department. If there's nothing else of importance to come before us by tonight, we are adjourned.
I don't think it's us stepping on the court. I think it's Selena